Hornets, let's go.
Richard, the Hornets are 3-0 for the first time in the history of the franchise. How are they doing it?
They're doing it through a team. First of all, my guy Bridges, I talked about him. He was my most valuable player of this weekend, 30+. And look, it's not just dunks. There's some sexy to it.
Oh.
If you guys are not watching the Charlotte Hornets, jump on board right now. They got swag. They got the drip. They got the dunks. They share the ball. They play a great brand of basketball. And Miles Bridges should be the Eastern Conference Player of the Week because he performed against a high-level opponent in Brooklyn. And that's one thing that I like, and I'm looking forward to watching them all year.
And he is the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, Janae.
Are you saying right now Charlotte is way too sexy?
They are sexy. They're too sexy.
But, like, you know where that's from, though?
Oh,
are you a lover boy?
No. I'm not a lover boy. No, I'm not certified.
My only point is they have two players that are in the top three, I think, in plus-minus, which shows that they're playing a good brand of basketball. But I just like to
see. I'm old enough. I'm old enough where it's right said, Fred, but we won't talk about that.
You could just stop. I'm old.
Yeah, you just stop
at full stop. End of the sentence.
Okay.
Guys, we can't talk about the Nets and Kyrie and not talk about the other drama saga. And that's the Sixers and Ben Simmons. So coming up, don't worry, Richard. Ramona Shelburne is back to tell you the latest crowd chanting "Stand with Kyrie" in support of Kyrie Irving, who is unvaccinated, which is why he is currently not with the team. So we now welcome in Om Young-Masuk, who's covering the Nets for us. He was at Sunday's game in Barclays Center. And Om, we just saw video footage, and you were there. So what was the scene like on Sunday outside of the arena?
Malika, I was all up in that protest, getting out there, shooting video. And it's really kind of surreal, Malika. I think you know, having lived in New York City, this was actually a pretty diverse protest. There were old people, young people. I saw families with kids in their strollers. I saw, black, white. I even saw an old Asian lady. And they were all chanting "Stand with Kyrie" and no vaccine mandate. It really kind of only got out of hand a little bit once, where a handful of protesters tried to barge their way through the front door, and they were stopped by Barclays security. But, we're going to see tonight if those protesters come back. There was actually a protest today that walked across Brooklyn Bridge for municipal workers. They were protesting the vaccine mandate.
Interesting. I checked in with a Nets official, Om, and they said that any charges would have to be brought by police. The Nets are not going to be looking into that specifically. But I am curious, Om, how is Kyrie Irving's absence? How is that affecting Brooklyn?
So, look, Steve Nash kind of gave us a warning on Friday night after they won in Philadelphia, in which they needed a triple-double from Kevin Durant and to score 16 of the final 17 points to win. He said it's not going to be pretty for a while because he is still experimenting with rotations and lineups. And then we didn't think scoring would be an issue for these Nets. Only two Nets scored in double figures on Sunday in their loss to Charlotte. Kevin Durant and James Harden were the only ones to score in double figures. Afterwards, Kevin Durant was asked twice if the Nets have enough to win.
We definitely want Kyrie Irving out here on the floor, and he's a huge part of what we do, but it's not happening right now, so we got to figure it out. But nobody's going to lose confidence while we playing and hope Kyrie come and save us during the game. Nah, we got to play.
Malika, the Nets are in the second of a 6-game homestand, of which we don't think Kyrie Irving is going to be here anytime soon. So the Nets have to figure out how they are going to play without Kyrie Irving. This feels like preseason extended for Steve Nash and his team.
Interesting, Omen. You were standing in Barclays Center where they have a back-to-back the second half tonight where the Nets take on the Wizards. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. We have a lot to unpack here with the Nets. Brooklyn lost that game to Charlotte and is now 1-2 on the season. So I definitely want to break this down a little bit on the court with Chiney Ogwumike and Richard Jefferson. And Richard, Chiney, you just heard Kevin Durant, and you heard him say that we're just not able to wait for Kyrie Irving. They can't sit around and wonder if and when he's going to come back. They'll just need to play, and they can't just be saved. So, Chiney, what's that going to take?
Well, we know that, Kevin Durant, when he wakes up, he's going to get buckets. Like, that's a fact, period.
Eats buckets for breakfast.
Thank you. And, their previous game, their last game, he was 17 for 24 from the field. A productive, normal night for Kevin Durant. The question is, how is everyone else going to hold it down? And if you look, Om just mentioned it, like 2 guys in total in double figures. That does not work in the NBA right now. Mind you, we know that the Nets are experimenting with rotations in their rosters, given that they're trying to find how to emerge out of this, liminal space. But we know KD's going to show up. James Harden probably needs to do a little bit more. He's been great in Brooklyn, leading with assists and trying to get everyone else going, but we kind of need a little bit more of Houston James. And then the supporting cast has to find their groove.
No, they do. And one of the things that you look around the league, the Phoenix Suns, the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, teams that have had their normal roster, they're going to have like a normal kind of trajectory of how they're going to play. Same with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Sure.
But then when you get to the Phoenix, or when you get to the Brooklyn Nets, you get to the Los Angeles Lakers, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of changes. There's been some like drama, especially up there in Brooklyn. They're going to figure it out. If there's anybody that questions Kevin Durant, he was an early MVP candidate. James Harden was one of the MVP favorites in the middle of the season last year. They're going to figure it out. They got new talent. They got guys back. So it's going to take a little bit of time.
I do like that we saw LaMarcus Aldridge a good game from him as well.
Right.
Like, they're going to find it just will take some time.
And he's not playing tonight. He's resting on the second half of the back-to-back, but Kevin Durant is playing. He's expected to play, is available to play, at least as of right now, for this second half. So it sounds like what you're saying is, similarly to the Lakers, this is early days.
No, the LaMarcus thing is like the Carmelo. It's great to see the vets contributing at a high level. You don't need it every night, but when they give it to you.
Right. Well, and similarly to Carmelo, you mentioned earlier the buy-in, right? Carmelo has not won, and that is furthering his want to be there, right? When you look at LaMarcus, what he went through last year, being forced to face retirement before he was ready, you can clearly tell that he wants to be there. This is something that he's going to be playing hard for. So another storyline from this game and the early part of the season is James Harden not getting to the free throw line as quickly and frequently as he was in previous seasons. So Harden has only attempted 9 free throws through 3 games this season.
Wow.
So let's put that into comparison. 3 seasons prior to this one, that's a big difference. In the same span last season, Harden already had taken 36, so 36 to 3 free throws. In 2019, it was 48. So Brooklyn head coach Steve Nash believes this is because of the new rule change on the officiating where they say overt or abrupt or abnormal non-basketball moves, that's not okay.
He's unfairly become the poster boy of not calling these fouls. But some of them are definitely fouls still.
No matter how much of a big deal we try to make it, a foul is a foul. It's pretty simple. I feel like putting too much emphasis on rules, or not even rules, just certain people, to where you look at it as clear fouls. And but for me, you just got to keep going. No big deal.
I feel like I remember Steve Nash having some complaints about this when it came to Trae Young, but now that we're shifting, so is this a valid complaint from Nash?
It is a valid complaint because basically what happens, it's the stars. It's the stars, and then it trickles down to the rest of the league because you're talking about usage rate. So people were talking about Steph. They were talking about, Trae. They were talking about James Harden be the #1 guy. So these are some of the plays that they are no longer calling fouls on for him. But James Harden is a multi-talented individual. If we're just focused on free throws, but some of these are missed. So he is getting unfairly targeted, and he just can't let that affect his game. Because, look, he's just having a full-on conversation right now.
It's so easy to say that when this rule comes into effect, we're going to look at this man, James Harden, based on the public pressure that has been exuded through NBA fans saying, and you guys know I say it all the time, step back, free throw. You can laugh at me. Okay.
Yeah, I just want that.
Right? Free throw. And people felt some type of way, but it was effective for him in the position he was. That was the best option for the Rockets.
Sure.
And I will say this, Richard, as a hooper, we know in the locker room, what's the #1 sign of a player being aggressive?
Free throws.
Getting to the free throw line. While James Harden is great at knocking down, threes and floaters, we saw a different kind of aggression when he kind of risked it all to come to Brooklyn. And so this year is different. There's a lot that's in the balance. And so I think it's a combination of the new rule and him trying to sort of feel out what this team looks like after having a season where he focused on passing first. But one thing I love about James Harden, that man can turn it on at any time.
Yeah, he's going to be fine. But this is, but to your point that you made earlier, this isn't just James Harden. The NBA isn't at an all-time low. So they've cut it all out, and that happens a lot. When there's a big rule change or there's adjustments, you see this big shift, and then it slowly starts the referees start to kind of get their rhythm because this is brand new for them also.
Well, and it's a pendulum swing, right? These players, they're smart. They learn these rules and they learn how to use them to their advantage, right? So you have seen players when the rule was a little bit different, when you didn't have this rule, learning how to contort and use their bodies and play to that rule. So there's an adjustment period there.
Yeah.
But players like James Harden, like Trae Young, like Steph Curry, we saw that they're going to figure it out. And whatever you think of the new rules, they're making an impact across the NBA. This season, teams are averaging 19.5 free throw attempts per game, which would be the lowest in any season in NBA history, as you alluded to, Richard. So let's